What is going on, YouTube? It is me, Tamer Azizz, and today we're going to be talking about the best Canadian bank stock that you can get. I'm currently in the process of building my long-term portfolio, and I feel like the financial sector is a good place to be. I personally think that the best bank stock to buy right now is RBC, and to back this up, we're going to be using the 5 factors that I use to personally screen dividend stocks. In case you don't know what dividends are, it's just an amount of money the company would give you for basically investing with them. The banks that we will be comparing today are RBC, CIBC, TD, National Bank, Scotiabank, and BMO. The first factor that we're going to be looking at is dividend growth of 10% every single year for 21 consecutive years. Unfortunately, none of these banks have actually fit the criteria. Let's just work with what we have. Comparing the big 6 right now, we see that Scotiabank, RBC, and CIBC have raised their dividends for the longest amount of time. 9 years for Scotiabank and 8 years for CIBC and RBC. The bank that stands out the most is RBC. RBC stands out to me big time because there's a difference of 2.3% out of these top 3 stocks, which has been increasing its dividend for 8 years and has an average increase of 8.62%. You can also argue that BMO and TD have very high dividend increases. The problem is they haven't been increasing it for a while, and that's just weak. Now, I would be a pretty nice guy and allow the top 3 with a point each, but the problem is that there's too much of a difference between their annual increase. That 2.3% difference is huge for me. So the only bank that's going to be getting a point is RBC, putting it at 1 point and the rest of the banks at 0 points. The second factor that we're going to be looking at is the consistency of the payout ratio. The payout ratio basically tells you how much the company is giving out in dividends in relation to the income that it's getting. The higher the payout ratio is, the worse it looks for a company. The payout ratio is calculated by taking the total amount of dividends divided by net income. But personally for me, I compare it to the free cash flow instead of the net income. The reason why I use free cash flow instead of net income is definitely going to be for another video, just so that we don't stray off topic. And my criteria is to aim for anywhere between 50% and 75%. Nothing higher, but if I find something that's lower, then I'm gonna go with it. What I've done is I've calculated the payout ratio based on free cash flow. This easy bar graph that shows you the last 4 years of each company's payout ratio. And before you tell me anything about 2019 numbers for TD Bank, this was because the payout ratio was almost negative 1000%. I saw that and I was like, peace, I'm not doing that. National Bank, CIBC, and RBC all fit my criteria of a payout ratio between 50% and 75%. The bank that stands out to me the most is definitely RBC. Its payout ratio has been consistently below 50% for the past 4 years, and that for me is a big deal breaker. Otherwise, I find it kind of sketchy how National Bank and CIBC just had a sudden spike out of nowhere in 2017. And I don't need that type of stress in my life. Nice guy Tam is going to give each of the 3 banks 1 point each. This puts RBC at 2 points, National Bank and CIBC at 1 point, and the rest of the banks at 0 points. The next factor that we're going to be looking at is a dividend yield of 4 to 4.7%. The dividend yield tells you how much the company is giving out in dividends per share in relation to its current stock price. Taking Scotiabank for an example, these guys pay out $3.60 for each share that you own with the company. In relation to its current stock price of $56.19, divide $3.60 by that current stock price. This then gives you a dividend yield of 6.4%. At the time of making this video, every single bank had a dividend yield higher than 4%, so they automatically all get a point each. 2 banks that stand out to me the most are RBC and National Bank once again. You can call me crazy, but even though they have the lowest dividend yield, my reasoning for this is something called the market capitalization, also known as market cap. Market cap is kind of complicated to describe, but long story short, it shows you the value of the actual stock itself, and it's used to compare within other stocks within the same section of the market. The higher this market cap is, the more valuable the stock, and vice versa. So we're going to be throwing it back to elementary school, and I'm showing you guys a pie chart. I've included all of the Canadian bank stocks into this pie chart. RBC has the largest market cap. If you were to compare this to CIBC, this pie chart is telling you the RBC stock has a lot more value than the CIBC stock. National Bank has the lowest market market cap, if the value of this stock grows, chances are so will its market cap. And if its market cap grows, this will most likely push the bank to increase its dividends. RBC, on the other hand, which has the highest market cap out of the big six, has the lowest dividend yield. To me, this means that they have more of a tendency to keep on increasing their dividends. That's what I really aim for when it comes down to this dividend yield. I don't care if you're at a 13% yield or even a 2% yield. It also shows you that RBC has less of a tendency to decrease its dividends, cut out its dividends, or even just have financial trouble. The fourth factor that I look at is consistent earnings growth. This is using a metric called the EPS, also known as the earnings per share. This EPS comes out every 3 months and for every single company. This metric gives an idea to investors as to how profitable a company was during that 3 months. The higher this EPS value is, the more the company is pulling in terms of profits. We're going to be looking at this metric for the past 5 years or the past 21 quarters, which will give us a pretty good idea as to how profitable each of these banks are getting. I know we're both looking at this graph right now and we would much rather look at a wall. To make this a little more simpler for us, we're going to be throwing elementary school math out of the way and then we're bringing in high school math. I never thought I would see the day. Y equals mx plus b and r squared. If you remember these two bad boys, you're definitely going to be giving this video a thumbs up. Basically, we're going to be looking at the m value of the y equals mx plus b. And if you kind of forgot what these two do, this m will basically tell us how fast the earnings of a company are growing with time. The higher that this m is going to be, the faster that the company is growing its profitability with time. R squared, on the other hand, is going to be showing us how consistent these earnings are actually growing. And later you'll see with an example that the closer the r squared value is to 1, the more consistent that the earnings are actually growing at. So shout out to my high school textbook, you came clutch. The bank that had the highest r squared value was TD Bank. This is where I actually want to highlight the importance of r squared. The reason why this r squared value was so high was because the profits were mostly around the trend line, the straight baby blue line. This is what we're looking for because it shows us a level of consistency. Let's look at CIBC's charts. Their profits have always been away from that straight blue line, and this is why it has the lowest r squared value of 0.089. National Bank comes in second place with an r squared value of 0.383. Now, this is the ideal type of chart that you want to be looking at, but I'm assuming because of the big difference in these two little peaks, that's probably why its r squared value is so short. If these peaks were closer to the trend line, this r squared value would be so much higher. Looking at the slope, on the other hand, we have RBC that has the highest slope hands down. This means that RBC has been growing its profits at the fastest rate with time. Another thing to note is that not only does RBC have the fastest growth rate, it has the third highest r squared value, meaning that it's growing its profits at a faster rate and it's consistent as well. Now in second place for the slope comes TD Bank with a slope of 2.62. Combining both factors of the slope and the r squared values, 1 point is going to be going out to RBC, TD, and National Bank. This puts RBC at 4 points, National Bank at 3 points, TD and CIBC at 2 points, and the rest of the banks are still left with 1 point each. The last factor that we're going to be looking at is free cash flow growth. Free cash flow is basically the amount of money that a company has left after it's basically spent on everything. Usually this free cash flow is kept to pay out either dividends or interest payments from debt that the company has. This is basically showing us the free cash flow growth since 2005. But just by looking at this, our brains are probably just going like, so again, let's use our favorite celebrity couple, Mr. R squared and Mrs. Slope. Now the first one we're going to be looking at is RBC that has the highest slope. Not only this, but it also has the highest r squared value of 0.412. In second place for the slope comes BMO. I'm literally just getting anxiety by looking at this BMO chart, so I'm not even going to consider it because it's weak. Let's look at another bank stock instead, which has the second highest r squared value, and this is National Bank. Now in comparison to the other 5 banks, National Bank has the slowest free cash flow growth, but there is consistency, and for me, consistency is key. I'm going to be giving RBC and National Bank 1 point each. I'm sorry, BMO. Comparing the final results, we have RBC with 5 points, National Bank with 4 points, none of the banks have 3 points, CIBC and TD with 2 points, and the rest of the banks with 1 point each. I really want to hear about what you guys think about this analysis and what you guys think of RBC as an investment. I would love to hear back from you guys, so please leave me a comment in the comment section down below. But for now, this is me, Azizz, signing out. Peace.